No, first of all, that's not even the format of the dumb joke that they're doing. But yeah, no, the condom's not just about protecting you. It is about the other person.
Yes.
What part of condoms
Be sure to wear your condoms so others are protected from your little, you're just weensiest little Mr. Potato Head junk.
But the condom actually is like the mask because it fell apart in like 5 minutes. Your stupid joke, which never made any sense, fell up. Yes, the condom is intended to protect another person like the mask is. You potentially have the virus. You potentially breathe it out. The mask protects other people. That's not, I almost said it's not complicated. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe like 15 months into this pandemic, people still don't get that they might endanger other people. Free the Smiles went on to say, wear bug spray to prevent illnesses from mosquitoes and others. Well, look, you very carefully chose a reference there, mosquitoes. I assume you're talking about malaria, which isn't communicable via respiration. So, but the thing is, other viruses and diseases are, and they loved it. They loved it. Thousands of retweets. There also a congresswoman retweeted that. I don't know what she believes about masks or about COVID, but she does think that that guy is more reputable than a Dr. Fauci or Dr. Birx or any of them. Any other thoughts?
Just give the vaccine to other countries. I know we're starting that. Give more of it. We don't deserve it. How much science was wasted on this like worm-brained population of Americans? I'm sorry, if you're watching from another country and your country's having a trouble getting the vaccine, I apologize, man. You deserve that 10 times more because I'm assuming a lot of these people are in the United States. Just we are so not deserving. You should have to show your Twitter timeline and what you've retweeted to get a vaccine.
Yeah. Okay, really fast. I wanted to give some good news. Let's give some good news. We only have like 3 minutes for this, but here is a bit of good news. Virtually all of the news since Pride began has been Republicans attacking members of the LGBTQ plus community. That continues, but there are good people out there too. So I want to talk about what happened with a bake shop. So this is Confections in East Texas. Said it had suffered a backlash after posting a photo on the 2nd of June of a rainbow decorated cookie in the shape of a heart. That's not the good news. There's bad news, then good news. So they had posted this: more love, less hate. Happy Pride to all our LGBTQ friends. All lovers of cookies and happiness are welcome here. And you see some brilliantly, beautifully decorated, colorful rainbow cookies. Well, apparently some bad people didn't like that because they later posted, today has been hard, really hard. We lost a significant amount of followers because of a rainbow heart cookie we posted. We received a very hateful message on our business page, canceling a large order of summer themed cookies after they'd already decorated them. My heart is heavy. Honestly, I never thought a post that literally said more love, less hate would result in this kind of backlash to a very small business that is struggling to stay afloat and spread a little cheer through baked goods. So that's the bad. But then the good, after that post, people rallied to buy cookies and to support them and to show support for them for what they did. And then 2 days later, they posted this, a photo of a line wrapping around the block there saying, we're overwhelmed. This was taken around noon today and sent to us by a sweet customer. Thank you. And later they put this photo up of their rack of cookies, free of cookies because people bought all of their cookies.
Yes.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that is the heartwarming story that I needed for this day, and I am crying. But I also think it's good to show, and it's good to show the haters, like, no, when you stand on the right side of history, when you are inclusive, when you see people, and when you're in Texas and you shout out like, yay, happy Pride, that you're gonna win in the end because #love wins. But also, F the haters. They're always gonna lose. And I think it's important, even such a small story like this sends a huge message. Because once again, these are the kinds of things that right-wingers love. Oh my God, if there's a baker that doesn't wanna bake a cake for a gay couple, oh my God, put them on a pedestal, So hey, guess what? We can play the same game to people who actually celebrate celebrate gay rights, celebrate diversity, and celebrate actually people living their truths and loving who they want to love, baby.
Yeah, and this is how it should work. Support the businesses you like, and if some conservative doesn't like it, then don't buy their cookies. I haven't had their cookies; they look great. I don't know for sure, but this is how it should work. Don't try to cancel them. Support them if you want to. Don't support them if you don't want to. This works for me. And thank you to everybody who supported the business and hope that they're doing a little bit better. That said, that is all the time that we have for our first 90-minute experiment. I think we can all agree, perfectly smooth. Nobody has a problem with anything. So we're gonna continue to iterate and all that, and we'll talk about some things. I have some questions that hopefully the audience will help me with. But anyway, the most important thing is that Dr. Rashad Richey's Indisputable is coming up next. We've had a lot of fun, but the show continues. The news and analysis continues. Dr. Rashad Richey's 8-week run on the TYT network begins in just a few minutes. So definitely stay tuned for that. YouTube.com/indisputable-TYT, Twitch.tv/TYT. Gonna be awesome. Please show some support for Rashad. He's absolutely the best. Francesca, thank you as always for being here on Monday.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you.
Thank you. And for all of you, stay tuned. It's coming up in just a few.
What a start. I already got the dopest music in the game. Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richey. We got a lot happening today. So let me say this. This is the first show. This is our inaugural show. Thank you for being here. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you support the program, make sure you share the live, share the stream, like it, share it, get it done. We're gonna get into it, but before I get into it, let me talk about critical race theory. Across this entire country, you've had states like Texas, Idaho, and others pass laws banning the teaching of critical race theory. You have a band of Karens who have launched assaults against school boards, saying, don't teach our children critical race theory. Here's the reality of it, ladies and gentlemen. K through 12 education does not teach critical race theory. As a matter of fact, colleges, undergrad, they don't even teach critical race theory. It's considered to be an advanced theoretical framework. Graduate level classes typically will teach critical race theory if you're taking particular courses. Now, why are they saying they are banning critical race theory? Don't fall for the okie dokie. See, I'm from Glenwood Road. I peep game. They're simply running game on Republicans, moderates, independents, and trying to run game on those on the left. But it doesn't work here. We are immune to game. CRT, critical race theory, has been around since the 70s. It's not a new concept. It is a derivative of the legal scholarship concept, which examined racism as it correlates to systems, institutions, policies, not just people. In other words, if you eliminated or decreased the number of individual racist people in America, you would still have to contend with the fact that you have racist policies and racist norms connected to institutions. Let me give you another example. The US Constitution called me 3/5 of a person. That's called an institutional racist norm. The Declaration of Independence, another founding document of our nation, called Native Americans savages. That's an institutional racist norm. Those institutions continue to permeate today. Critical race theory, ladies and gentlemen, not taught in K through 12 education. There is no school teacher who has ever taught this in K through 12 education. As a matter of fact, when you went to high school, did you learn critical race theory? Of course not. This is a fabricated pretext in order to create a context to stop critical thinking, not critical theory. That's what this is all about. The bills that have been proposed and the bills that have been passed do not contain the verbiage critical race theory. Isn't that something? They don't have the verbiage that says CRT. They do say race, racism, racial, and even sexism. Those words are inside of these bills. The fabricated pretext is critical race theory to create the context to serve an agenda that says, let's stop thinking critically about what white racist lawmakers did in this country. That's what this is about. Let me give you another example of how Republicans have played this game before. Remember the weapons of mass destruction? Remember that? Once again, a fabricated pretext in order to create a context to serve their agenda. Most recent, massive voter fraud. Another fabricated pretext to create a context for them to serve their agenda, to eliminate or decrease your ability to have access to the ballot if you are black, brown, or poor. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot to talk about even beyond that. I got a segment coming up called I Wish a Karen Would. Karens are dangerous, ladies and gentlemen, detrimental to the progression of this society. We'll talk about Karens on this show as well. Before I get to that, let me bring on my big homie, somebody I have a lot of admiration and respect for. We got Cenk Uygur, my big homie. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Rashad. First of all, let me just say, it is just a pleasure to have Rashad Richey on the TYT network. It is just fantastic. And you lived up to the name of the show instantly. All these articles I've read about, it's a critical race theory that's being taught, etc. But wait a minute, it isn't taught. Okay, and that's just a fact. It's just a fact. Yet it's not in any of the articles. Why? The conservatives framed it as they're teaching critical race theory and we're passing bills against teaching critical race theory when it's just not true. So that we have to establish that before we even get to the real issues. And I love that I'm on your show on our network, okay? And so, but I want to dive into the issue because I think that it's interesting on many fronts. First of all, on the point that you made, so if the Republican bills mention the words race, racism, sexism, etc., does that mean that we're not going to be allowed to teach about race in this country? How can you possibly teach the history of America without mentioning race? It's, as Rashad just pointed out, it's in the founding documents. And get a load of the irony of the guys who said we should not take down the Confederate statues because we'd be erasing history. Now passing legislation to literally erase history from the textbooks. So it's when you're celebrating Confederate generals, all of a sudden you want to celebrate that portion of history. But when you want to talk about what actually happened in this country about race and yes, racism, all of a sudden you don't want to celebrate history. And all of a sudden you're looking to cancel certain portions of history because you find it inconvenient. So let's just acknowledge that right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And what they're trying to do, Cenk, is go back to a 1950s style of education of America in classrooms. And what that did was it created a propaganda mechanism. The way we taught American history and American reality in the 1950s was basically a public relations machine. We taught our students, children, that America was good and everybody else was actually evil, that America could do no wrong and America was right because it was America. And I would dare to argue that patriotism has nothing to do with a cult-like following. If you are a true patriot, you're able to give tough love when necessary in order to make sure that the country you actually do love and care for makes and becomes everything it can be.
Yeah, and so I want to take it a little bit further too, because building on the point you just made, you know the old saying, winners write the history books, right? And that is exactly right. And so unfortunately, in the old days in America, and this is just a fact, the winners were the racists. So when you have founding fathers who, by the way, I respect in other ways, and I thought they did an amazing job with the United States Constitution, but they were slaveholders. Yeah. So they wrote in slavery basically into the Constitution. They wrote away the humanity of black people into the Constitution. Now, luckily, they also provided 4 amendments, and so that was amended later. But you can't deny that history. And the winners writing the history books basically do that. They say, we're just gonna erase that part. And so, and look, guys, history is complicated. So Robert McNamara was, before he became Secretary of Defense during the Vietnam War and committed atrocities there, he was part of the people who planned the firebombing of Dresden and Tokyo in World War II. And he said something that was true. He said, look, if we lose the war, we're all going to be tried as war criminals because we're killing hundreds of thousands of civilians. We're burning them alive, okay? Now, it was a great cause to defeat the Nazis, but we did it in a horrific way, okay? And Imperial Japan. So that is complicated, it is nuanced, and you need to study all of it. And you can't erase any of it if you want to understand it. And the same thing applies, obviously, not just to slavery, but to how African Americans have been treated in this country for time immemorial. And look, I'll give you one thing that just happened a couple of days ago. I saw a documentary about Greenwood, the massacre in Tulsa, and look, I've known that story for a long time. We've talked about it on the Young Turks for a long time. But there was something that really struck me in the documentary. It was someone who had survived it as a kid, and she explained how she never wanted to talk about it. She still didn't want to talk about it, not because it was too emotionally painful, but because she was so worried, and it was ingrained in black culture at the time, so worried that if you said it out loud, it would happen again. That that white folks would get so mad they'd come and lynch you again. And so, if you think about it, and if you're being honest, that is an extreme form of terrorism.
Yeah.
And black folks in this country, through the not just slavery, but lynching, Jim Crow, etc., were terrorized. They were so afraid to even speak of their family members being brutally massacred for fear of what would happen. So now, if we taught that version of history, white people, folks, honestly, they would lose their minds. because you just used the word terrorism in relation to what happened in America. Now, the reality is that is what happened. That is what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And this is not that. This is a much, much milder form of an obvious fact. And even then they're saying, how dare you teach what actually happened?
Yeah, and it's amazing, right, that these individuals who are supposed to be stewards of history when it comes to white bigoted culture against black and brown people in America, are those that will say things like, we're not going to ever forget, or we need to keep these statues and flags taxpayer funded, even though they represent a dark hour in America. And here's the other thing, man, and I'm so pissed that to this day in the state of Georgia, I'm literally paying for symbols that represent my own oppression. I am forced as a taxpayer to pay for symbols that represent the oppression, not only of me as a black man in America, but of my ancestors, because I'm talking about the government and powers that be, would like to give places of nobility and honor to those that dishonored people in my family. Now, let me go back to these Karens for a minute. They have now started, Cenk, to create commercials. They are now going on the safe haven for all things racist, Fox News. And here's their latest rant about critical race theory in K through 12 education.
Loudoun County, Virginia, where fed up parents there have launched a fiery new ad campaign calling out critical race theory in classrooms, aiming to oust 6 school board members who they say tried to target and silence them.
Infecting our schools with critical race theory, training teachers that Christians are oppressors. One school board member even endorsed an official committee to, quote, silence the opposition. Parents and teachers are fighting back. They're recalling the 6 school board members who stood by and did nothing while parents were targeted.
Yeah, and then these parents, Cenk, went on to say that they're not only targeting critical race theory, which once again is not even taught in K through 12 education. It is a fabricated pretext. They're saying that they want to eliminate critical theory, period. Now, critical theory is the examination of institutions through the lens of economic, social, and political power as it relates to race in America. They want to eliminate all critical thinking in the United States or in K through 12 education. Here's another, this is a family, a mixed race couple talking about what does this mean for them.
Are our kids, are they half oppressor, half victim? How does that work?
And when they come home, who do they see? Do they see their mom and their dad? Or do they see an oppressor and the oppressed?
I think they see 2 silly ass parents that don't understand. That's what I think. Now, the reality is this. CRT takes it away from the person and applies the analysis to the institution. Cenk, why do you think they are so afraid of looking at the cause and effect reality of the original sin of this country, which was slavery that produced systemic racism? Why are they afraid to look at that one reality and actually provide remedy for it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it's exactly what I wanted to go to, because they're taking it personal in a way that reveals their hand, right? If I was playing poker against them, I'd think, I know what cards you're holding. Because here, I'll give you a perfect example. It's my example. So I'm Turkish, which in America means almost nothing because there's very few of us, and so it's not a thing that's talked about much. My background is Muslim. I grew up Muslim, so we're a little oppressed here in America. In Germany, Turks are far more oppressed. They're a much larger minority and they suffer significant discrimination, right? On the other hand, in Turkey, the Turks are the majority and arguably do the oppression. Okay, and I don't think it's that arguable. And they've done it historically, certainly, of Kurds, Armenians, Greeks, you name it, right? So does that make me guilty? No, it isn't about you. White folks, let me try to calm your nerves a little bit, okay? It isn't about you unless you make it about you, unless you take offense at it. If Turks oppressed Kurds in the past or today, I didn't do it. I'm looking to change it. I'm looking to make it better. Okay, I'm looking to fix it because I believe that we can go towards progress.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to fix it and you think it's A-okay, that's when you would take it personally and feel like it's an attack against you. It isn't an attack against Christians or white folks that this is what happened in the past. It isn't an attack against me personally right now that Muslims in the Ottoman Empire did not treat non-Muslims equally. That's a fact. Even if you're offended by it, it's a fact. It's true, right? So that I give it to you in a different context so you can understand that history is history.
That's right.
And so when I see these folks acting out, one of the things I see, Rashad, is they also get that the winners write the history books. And they're now worried that we're going to have equality in this country and that we're going to be equal winners in that sense. And that is what is at the core of what bothers Fox News, and that's why they do all these stories, and the folks that are so riled up about teaching what is indisputably true.
Yeah, here's the example I give my college students, because some of them have trouble understanding the concept of equality versus equity. And I teach a lot of white students, brown students, and black students. And I always explain that equality is actually an illusion. It is an illusion because nothing is actually equal. You don't treat someone exactly the same. Nature does not produce equality. Everything has a slight difference no matter what. The goal should have never been equality, but actually equity. That should have been the goal. And here's the biggest difference. If you're playing in a football game, you have two evenly matched teams. Let's call that equality. And these two evenly matched teams, they have a very similar talent pool. And this talent pool, both sides are told all you gotta do is play hard and you will win the game. Score more points than the other team and you win the game. And you have your crowd. Let's call that your independent media. And you engage in a good faith effort to actually win the game. It gets to the last quarter. You have 5 seconds left and you're up by 50 points. There is no way the opposition team can win. 1 second left in the game. You find out that the other team inherited 100 points before the game began. That is the difference between equality and equity. And the only way you resolve that problem is by going back to the core of why one team inherited 100 points and the other team had to start at 0. We got more on the other side. I got Cenk. First segment, in the can, indisputable. Dr. Rashad Richey.
Came in late to watch TYT Old School, and I hear Cenk Uygur talking about napkins. Is this the kind of nonsense Anna Kasparian was talking about? Gotta love membership privileges. Gotta love them.
Please have Dave on every 4 episodes or so.
Watching Ben Mankiewicz and Cenk Uygur on Old School talking is exactly like watching Seinfeld and George. I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Who's on Old School today? Is there one? At Dave Kohler. I hope it's not Brett Ehrlich.
This episode of Old School has killed me. Who knew a conversation about good and bad underwear could be so hilarious and relatable?
Couple things about this video. Dave Kohler looks so badass.
There's more than a 73% chance this Old School will be really funny. Cenk Uygur has been up since 4 a.m., so he's tired. Hence, everything will seem funnier to him. P.S. Remember, food talk, new words, and no or very little politics.
Dave Kohler, enjoyed performance on Old School. Can we please hear about your time as a geologist? One geologist to another?
I appreciate that all these people enjoy it because I know Cenk loves to do it, and he does it because he knows the fans love it too.
This looks like a conspiracy. This looks like a scheme to defraud.
The Bush administration put folks into the regulatory agencies who believed in destroying regulations.
Memories of the Great Depression were faded.
They stood on the floor of the Senate day after day attacking what they were trying to do.
They just generated all this junk, took home huge bonuses, and then when it collapsed, they said, oh, not us.
What they ginned up was pure extortion, putting a gun to the head of Congress.
Time and again, they heard the devastation that was happening in low and moderate income communities caused by bankers, by lenders, and they chose to ignore it.
I understood that the SEC was not merely a weakened version of what it was supposed to be. It was an agent of Wall Street.
When no one's enforcing the law, the criminals take over.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good
to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country. Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not saying how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Dog on the White House lawn, would that be?
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations, so if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
Welcome back to Indisputable. I'm your man, Dr. Rashad Richey. Okay, we're gonna shift gears. Before I shift gears, make sure you like and share the live. Also, subscribe. It's free to the YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe, youtube.com/indisputable_TYT. Hit that bell, make sure you're alerted when I'm live. We got a lot of conversation happening. Let's see what's happening in the super chat. Keita Boot Forever says, Dr. Richey is cleaner than the Board of Health and has more degrees than a thermometer. Such a great example for our youth. Thank you, and I am the youth, by the way. Cleo Girl says, great convo. Looking forward to more of this, Doc Hijank. Grandma Sunshine Dragon says, good luck with your show. We already love you, and I already love you back, Grandma. Thank you so much for your comment. A non-human humanist says, but if there is no racism, people will unionize. Something to think about. Josh says, going back to Rashad's first statement, this is an attack on critical thinking, and that is correct. Activist Dragon says, can't wait for it to start. He's such an intelligent man and debater. That was in the beginning before we actually started the show, but thank you. Ruth J. Morrison says, this should be a great episode. Wishing Dr. Richey longevity with this new program. We also got, thank you for that, Ruth. We also got a bunch of Twitch activity, level 5 hype train 300%. My Twitch folks, man, we've been down on Monday for a minute. So I'm thankful to my Twitch audience also, and thank you for making sure you're here with us. Daisy Dragon says, I teach high school special ed. I teach my students about equal and equity with giving everyone a piece of candy is equal. If someone chokes, if someone chokes, I don't have to give everyone the Heimlich. That's a great point, by the way. Okay, we're gonna talk about the other president of the United States, Senator Joe Manchin. Senator Joe Manchin, once again, is able to exert power from a place of the slimmest minority possible, from the place of one individual. One man is literally holding up all of democracy as we know it. And these folks are afraid of actual democracy. What is real democracy? Democracy means majority rule. 50% plus one is a democracy. This 60 vote jazz out of the Senate this filibuster mess that has been utilized as a tool of evil to stop progress in America should have never been a reality here. If you are afraid of democracy as an elected official, then you are in the wrong line of work. You're in the wrong business. So now Joe Manchin has decided to double down on the fact that he will not vote to eliminate the filibuster, even though we have done it before, called the nuclear option. We've done it under McConnell. This country has done it under Harry Reid. It has been done. He says, oh, no. We need to come together as a nation. We need to have bipartisan legislation. Bipartisan for what? These Republicans ain't loyal. They're not loyal to an agenda of progress. And you keep talking as if you think something different. Now he's against the For the People Act. What is For the People Act? HR 1. HR 1 would allow for voting rights to be maintained and restored through a federal uniform policy, something we have desperately needed forever. We've always needed a policy like this. He actually agrees with the policy. Senator Joe Manchin has no issue with the policy. He is citing, this is the reason he is not supporting HR 1 or For the People Act. He says, or it says, the senator asserted that the fundamental right to vote has itself become overtly politicized and taking aim at members of his party. Said some Democrats have attempted to demonize the filibuster and conveniently ignore how it has been critical to protecting the rights of Democrats in the past. He's actually halfway right about that, because the filibuster was used by Southern Democrats to stop anti-lynching laws from being eradicated from the books. So in that sense, you're right. It has protected Democrats who wanted to see legislation that was adversarial to this country. Here's another fun fact. 67% of Americans say they support HR 1 For the People Act, even after being provided opposition messaging. This support continued across party lines. 50% of Republicans supported, 68% of independents, 77% of Democratic voters. Here's another fact. I don't have the graphic for it, but it's the truth. 71% of West Virginians support the For the People Act. And the reason that Manchin has given for not supporting the act is the fact that it passed the House without a Republican vote, without Republican support. You mean to tell me that you are opposing good legislation simply because a do-nothing Republican did not sign off on it in a chamber you're not even a member of? Get the hell up out of here. That is the silliest thing I have heard in politics in a while. Cenk, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I was gonna bring up that West Virginia poll too. It's really important to bring it up because a lot of the time the press helps Joe Manchin's propaganda by pretending, well, he's gotta do this because the people of West Virginia want it. Well, that's just not remotely true. The overwhelming majority of Republicans, Trump supporters in West Virginia are actually for the People Act. And 71% overall, as you state. And he does it every time. $15 minimum wage. He said, oh no, the people of West Virginia don't want higher wages. Then they did a poll on it. It turns out, no, 63% of the people of West Virginia want a $15 minimum wage. When you aid and abet Joe Manchin in his lies, you are not being a journalist. You're helping corporate politicians lie to their voters, right? So on the two things specifically that he has already voted against and is threatening to vote against, the people of West Virginia do not agree. He does not represent them. So that of course leads to the question of why is Joe Manchin doing it? Because he can read a poll, he's a politician, they're obsessed with polls. He's doing it because of his donors. And that's the thing you never see in the media, except in a shocking turn of events, which I'm thrilled about. A Democrat, a fellow Democrat actually called out Manchin on television. Jemele Bowman came out and said, it's really his corporate agenda. I've never seen another Democrat say about a fellow Democrat, that's because he's taking corporate money. And that's exactly right. Jemele Bowman had the courage to say it. And by the way, Jemele Bowman pointed out another hypocrisy of Manchin. He said, he says he keeps wanting to do bipartisan legislation and work together. My office has been reaching out to him this entire time, and he will not return our calls. So apparently Joe Manchin only wants to work with Republicans, but not with progressive Democrats. So this whole idea of, I'm doing it for the kumbaya, nonsense. Total utter nonsense. By the way, this is a very rare moment where Twitter actually came in handy. In the past, we reported to you guys on TYT that right after they voted against the $15 minimum wage, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin went to the National Restaurant Association and collected checks.
Yeah.
They almost literally got paid, at least in campaign contributions, for voting no on that. Why? Because they're corporate donors. In that case, the Restaurant Association was dead set against higher wages for you guys because they wanted more money for themselves and they wanted to make sure you didn't get it. But on Twitter, in one of these tweets that I had, somebody pointed out a story I had not seen. It wasn't just the National Restaurant Association. Unsurprisingly, Reuters had a story right after that vote. The Chamber of Commerce sent checks to Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin as well. So let's be honest about what's happening here. The idea that, oh man, Joe Manchin loves the etiquette of the Senate and he just loves the filibuster so much because it was so productive for our country. No, the filibuster has been used almost exclusively against civil rights in this country. That's a fact.
Yeah.
The people of West Virginia don't give a damn about Senate etiquette. That's a fact. Any reporter pretending otherwise is a fool. And the people of West Virginia do not agree with him on the issues. The only people who agree with Joe Manchin on this are his corporate donors, and that is his source of power, and that is why he serves them like a good servant does.
Yeah, and this is a massive opening for Joe Biden, but he won't take it, Cenk.
No way.
He won't take this massive opening to properly and appropriately message the truth about Joe Manchin against his own constituents. If I were president of the United States, Joe Manchin wouldn't have to worry about a general election because I would guarantee him you won't make it out of a Democratic primary. He is in fact a transactional politician. You have to play the game in a transactional way with Joe Manchin. He's not a complex soul. And let's look at policy. Do you know how many progressive policies are common sense today that were considered radical of the era? Publicly funded K through 12 education was a progressive policy that's considered common sense today. Medicare and Medicaid were progressive policies that are considered common sense today. Social Security, another progressive policy considered to be common sense today. Everything that's being fought against by the Republicans and the Republican who's a Democrat in name only, Joe Manchin, will be considered common sense in the future, and these guys will be judged on the wrong side of history once again.
So Rashad, I just want to add one thing because you made such a good point about Biden won't fight him. So there's a couple of reasons why. Politico had a story recently over the weekend saying that Joe Biden's all carrots, no sticks, and that's usually how he has conducted himself in politics. Although with progressives, he finds a stick every once in a while. So that yes, that's a part of it. But here's the other part that they don't talk about, which is that Joe Manchin actually secretly represents a lot of Democrats. A lot of corporate Democrats.
Yeah.
And he's taking the hit for them because he doesn't mind because he thinks it plays well because the press helps him do marketing, saying, oh my God, I'm so against the Democrats, good people of West Virginia, vote for me. They never tell him that, hey, he's actually blocking the legislation that you're in favor of, right? But a lot of those corporate Democrats are hiding behind Joe Manchin. And they love that he's preventing the filibuster from being taken away. Because if they took away the filibuster, well then another giant corporate Democrat like Chris Coons, one of the top allies of Joe Biden in the Senate, would have to actually vote on these bills. And by the way, when at TYT, we helped to force a vote on the $15 minimum wage, we found out, yeah, Chris Coons and 8 other Democrats, not just Manchin and Sinema, were against raising the minimum wage at all. At to $15. They voted no. They voted no on the substance of it, okay? And by the way, you do not get permission to vote no if you're a senator from Delaware and a top ally of Joe Biden, unless you ask Joe Biden. There's no way they didn't go to the White House and tell him that they're gonna vote no on the $15 minimum wage, which Joe Biden is pretending to be in favor of.
Yeah.
So look, Biden is the guy who said nothing will fundamentally change. And you can trust us because we told you ahead of time. I told you from day one that Joe Biden and Joe Manchin were never gonna let the $15 minimum wage happen. They're not in favor of it, they've never been in favor of it. And when Joe Biden says, oh, well, golly gee, there's nothing I can do, I can't fight Joe Manchin, he's choosing not to fight him. He has the same exact donors as Joe Manchin does. And then he gets to say, oh, it wasn't me, it was bad old Joe Manchin, and there's nothing I can. No, there's a lot you can do. You're choosing not to do it because you actually agree with Joe Manchin.
And this is what happens, brother, when you have individuals in the Senate, you have people in political power far too long. While we may judge Joe Manchin based on the actions of Joe Manchin alone, we know that because of his relationships and deep connections in Washington politics, he makes no decision in a silo. His decision and his connections are all interrelated to other relationships that he currently has. Let's play some of the video of Joe Manchin trying to explain his insane position.
Senator Joe Manchin announced he will vote against the For the People Act, essentially closing the door on Democrats' push for large-scale voting rights reform on Capitol Hill. Manchin defended his decision in an op-ed in the Charleston Gazette-Mail, writing, "Voting and election reform that is done in a partisan manner will all but ensure partisan divisions continue to deepen."
I think it's the wrong piece of legislation to bring our country together and unite our country, and I'm not supporting that because I think it would divide us further. I don't want to be in a country that's divided any further than I'm in right now. I love my country, and I think my Democrat and Republican colleagues feel the same.
The legislation is not meant to bring people together. The legislation is meant to remedy a historical injustice in this country. We're talking about the fundamental basis of democracy, as we call it, and that is protecting the right to vote. This is not bringing the country together. It's not supposed to bring the country together. That's not what the bill is. Cenk, what say you? And I got to go to the next story, but I want to get your opinion on what he said about this is the wrong legislation to bring the United States together.
Yeah, that's nonsense. And here's another instance where TYT told you ahead of time that would happen. You can go back and see our videos from a month, 2 months, 3 months ago. I did an interview with Harvard law professor Larry Lessig, where I very clearly said, and I've said this on many occasions, they're never going to do HR 1 for the People Act. It's not just Joe Manchin. The Democrats aren't going to do it because it has anti-corruption measures in it. Yeah. By the way, that's also why it's popular with Trump supporters. Because the one thing, and probably the only thing that we agree with on Trump supporters is they wanted to drain the swamp. They hated the corruption. They picked the very worst guy to do that, right? But their intent was to be anti-corruption. HR 1 for the People Act actually has anti-corruption measures in it. That is why the corrupt Democrats, not all of them, but unfortunately a lot of them, go, oh, no, I don't want that anti-corruption in there. Because then that might affect my lobbyist money, my dark money, and it might support a primary opponent against me that could just raise money from small donors. I don't want that. My main advantage is my corporate money. That's why I told you ahead of time they were never gonna do it. So, I mean, look at all the disingenuous things that Manchin says. He says, I want, I don't want to politicize this issue. Well, first of all, you're a politician, right? This whole talk of not politicizing is insane, right? Second of all, who politicized voting rights? The Republicans did by passing over 30 bills across the country saying, here's who's not allowed to vote. That's politicizing it. All that HR 1 does is it reverses their politicizing of it. So when he says it, and Bowman said this on CNN as well, what he's actually saying is, I like the Republicans politicizing it. I like and I want to help them obstruct Democrats fixing the issue. So I'm gonna help them be more corrupt, and I'm gonna help them prevent more people from voting. Yeah. So this, oh golly gee, I just want to get along, is total nonsense, horse crap. Because the horses, speaking of horses, the horse out of the barn. They already passed those bills at the state level. So if you're either gonna fix it or you're not gonna fix it. Joe Manchin is 100% lying, and by the way, he's worse than a Republican, because when Mitch McConnell is coming at you, you see him from the front. Right, and it's easier to battle. And in an ironic and incredible thing, he's actually more honest than Joe Manchin. When Joe Manchin, as a Democrat, repeats Republican talking points and makes it seem like they're the ones trying to protect voting rights, that then has the press go, oh well, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says the Republicans are right. And that is, not only does he block it, the vote, so we cannot get to a resolution, so he might as well be a Republican. But on top of that, he helps their propaganda as if they are the ones who are being bipartisan. And that is why Joe Manchin is definitively worse than having a Republican senator from West Virginia.
Very well said, very well said. On the other side of the break, we're gonna talk about something called race norming. For anyone who believes that institutional racism is not still active and implemented today, I'm going to introduce you to a concept, if you have not heard of it, called race norming, and how the NFL used the concept of race norming to deny specifically black individuals who worked for their company as football players, but they worked for the company, to deny them certain tort claims because of race norming and what they deemed to be cognitive ability. We got more on the other side. This is Indisputable.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Welcome back to Indisputable. I'm Rashad Richey. Let's go to some of our comments from the audience. Let's go to TYT members. Zoolander Establishment DM says, so Joe Manchin is officially not for the people. Doesn't get any clearer than that. Derek said, let's go Doc. Thank you. Biden flavor corn pop. I know the gangster corn pop, infamous gangster in the land of gangsterdom. Says teaching the truth now saves folks from losing their minds, man. 100, absolutely. YouTube super chat. Silver Harlow says, vote with me, Manchin, or I'll crush your political career with White House press conferences and rallies in your state, calling you out and endorsing your opponents. Said Biden never. Another super chat. Thank you. We got a lot of good super chat stuff. Wayne Sugahara. I said that almost right, I'm sure. Great start to this show. I really appreciate your high level of discourse and intellectual analysis. Thank you so much. Another super chat. Author Ashbrook says, you should run for office, Dr. R. And my answer to you, author, is hail to the null. Let's go to Stray X. Another super chat. Great way to start the week. That is indisputable. Rain Du Sud. I'm probably right on that name, maybe not. These people are playing hot potato with our languishing lives, crumbling infrastructure, all while enriching themselves and those within their orbits. Yes, that is absolutely 100% correct. Alex Merrill, Dragon Queen, the infrastructure bill is hella watered down now. Let's start a new bill more reflective of Green New Deal. Listen, I'm down with that. I'm completely down with that. Carp ODB says, kicking the truth to young progressive youth. Yeah, I am. Tell me what to put says, but if Joe Manchin were progressive, Biden would certainly find the courage to fight Manchin. That's a great freaking point. All right, we have our founder and host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, still here with us. Cenk, let's talk about race.
Sorry, Cenk's internet went out.
Norming. All right, so his internet went out, but I'm still live, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
we can keep going with you.
We're gonna bring Cenk back. Okay, let's talk about race norming for a minute. Race norming is the proof positive that institutional racism not only exists, but it is promoted as a policy with major companies in the United States of America. The NFL is a major company. Let's be very clear about what the corporation represents. And this major company employs a whole lot of black people. And they pay black people money in order to entertain them. But many of these black athletes have been injured because of the brutality of the game. Now there's a practice called race norming. Race norming says this: based on your race, you are already considered to be a lower cognitive thinker. I kid you not. The NFL had a policy called race norming, which was used as part of its calculation to determine who was eligible to receive a portion of the 2017 $1 billion settlement for former players with traumatic brain injuries. Race norming assumes that black players start out with a lower level of cognitive function and thereby makes it harder for those retirees to prove that they have been adversely affected mentally because of football. I know it sounds like something out of the KKK handbook, and it actually is. This same ideology was used by members of the Ku Klux Klans in order to suggest and say, imply, and dogmatically preach people were inherently more that black people, were inherently not as smart as white people in America. So you mean to tell me that the same guide that the KKK used in order to preach a doctrine that black people were not as cognitive as whites is the same policy that the NFL used to deny black players their ability to receive money in tort claims against them. Damn. So here's what the NFL said.
Amazing.
This is amazing. Here's what the NFL said. We are committed to eliminating race-based norms in the program and more broadly in the neuropsychological community. Okay, they just threw the neuropsychological community under the bus for their dumbass policy. Here's what else they said in the statement. The replacement norms will be applied prospectively and retrospectively for those players who otherwise have qualified for an award, but for the application of race-based norms. Once again, the ideology, the philosophy that black people are inherently dumb and they are not as intellectually superior as white folks comes from the KKK handbook to indoctrinate other KKK members, but was fully adopted as a practice in the NFL that was used to say basically, oh, we can't give this black person a lot of money because their cognitive ability was already compromised because they are black. And because of that, we now can put a limit on how much we pay them. So a white person would get paid more than a black person under that rule. Cenk, amazing, can't believe it, but it is real.
No, it's really one of the most amazing stories I've covered in a long time. And we cover a lot of amazing stories because I had to read half a dozen articles to make sure that I wasn't misreading it. Like,
right.
This is the year 2021. And guys, you're not mishearing it. The NFL would systematically say, in essence, now this is gonna sound super ugly, but understand, and I'm telling it to you in its frank terms, because this is what the NFL actually believed and practiced until this moment, until they got caught in this moment in 2021. Black people are so stupid that when if they get dementia, what's the difference? So we're not gonna pay them. Wow, holy cow, that is the most racist policy I have ever heard of. So guys, think about this. See, when I see a story like this, I think about the mechanics. I think about all of the people that actually followed through on this policy, because this is real. They got sued by people who were specifically denied. They did this all the time. So there were bureaucrats inside the NFL that said, oh yeah, that's a black person. Don't pay them if they get dementia because of the concussions that they suffered during the NFL. Pay the white players, do not pay the black players, because really, on average, they're claiming, right? What's the difference? It's just, and no one objected to that. No NFL executive said, are you guys insane? We're not going to pay the black players like we're paying the white players because we're saying that they're dumb. Are you insane? Nobody said that. They all were like, well, of course, don't pay them because their cognitive ability was already lower. By the way, I mean, I don't know if we have to, I guess we have to say it in the year 2021, and I guess we have to say it to NFL executives. That ain't true. Let alone the fact that it's horribly racist. By the way, look at the people that did the best on the Wonderlic scores, right? That's the test that they take coming into the NFL, that basically tests intelligence. Benjamin Watson, one of the top scorers of all time. And I can go on and on and on, right? And they look at that and go, nope, if he gets mental issues because of football, we're not gonna pay him because he's black.
Yeah.
And the fact that they waited to be exposed on this, and guys, let's keep it real. This is the same league that has banned Colin Kaepernick because he dared to say that maybe police officers shouldn't shoot unarmed, innocent black people. And they said they found that position to be so offensive that they have banned him for life. To this day, they brought Tim Tebow back. And to this day, Colin Kaepernick is certainly one of the top 96 best quarterbacks in the country. That is indisputable, let alone the top 32. I say 96 because they go 3 deep on an NFL roster on quarterbacks. Right. It is absurd to say Kaepernick isn't. The NFL appears to be avowedly racist.
Yeah, and think about the systemic elements connected to this, Cenk. You had a court involved. That court signed off on this settlement agreement. You also had psychologists involved who gave their permission and their expert permission to say race norming was a legitimate psychological science. And then you had the attorneys involved on all fronts who eventually signed off on this race norming madness. And during the signature phase, we still did not hear about the degradation that was happening in the NFL. They have now been exposed. The public relations nightmare is upon them, and now they're trying to save face. So they can miss me with that. I gotta transition quickly, man. I could talk to you for hours, all right? But we gotta talk about Karen. This is my segment, I wish a Karen would. So in this segment, we follow Karens throughout the United States because Karens can be quite adversarial to progress of people, especially black people. Now, there's a Karen, and this is a hell of a story, who decided to commit criminal trespass on the campus of an elementary school. And this Karen, in a way to, I guess, expose that masks were dangerous, put on a mask, went on a campus, an elementary campus, in order to create her own sting operation. Let's go to the first video.
Okay, I'll record once I'm inside. I gotta get in. Okay, I'll talk to you guys once I'm inside. Do I look like a 7th grader? No? Cool, awesome. Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see you behind me. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I am gonna get so caught. I'm actually really scared now.
I am so sorry for the quality of this video. But a 30-year-old disguising as a 13-year-old and made it through lunch. I've been here all day, face to face with teachers. My eyebrows are really stupid too.
Okay, now here's the thing. This Karen made herself up, decided to engage in her own sting operation. Who in the hell would do that? And she commits criminal trespass, stays at this school for 7 freaking periods. She ends up getting caught, called into the principal's office. She did get arrested, but here's some more of what happened.
Let me explain my day to you. I had to put on the tanner and I had to dye my hair because Julie's hair is darker. I wanted to go as Julie. I wasn't going as my daughter. I wasn't trying to going impersonating another child. I wasn't trying to be someone else. I was trying to be my kid and my kid only. I walked in, they asked me for my ID number. They asked me for my ID number and I gave it to them. I wrote it down. Julie had told me and I memorized it. I wrote down my ID number and my name and they said, "Did you sign in?" And I said, "Yes, I signed in." And they said, "Okay." They let me walk right on through.
Okay, all right, so she continues to commit criminal trespass. And here's more to that story.
I did this to prove a point. I'm a parent, and if you're a parent and you don't understand and you're being a Karen and you're writing all these ugly things, go somewhere else. I proved that I could get through the public school system. It just happened to be public school, and I made it without any problem. I ate lunch without my mask on. I mean, I thought that was gonna be the deal breaker, but it's not. Somebody commented that I look 35. That was rude.
And here's the kicker. The woman had a warrant out for her arrest for an unrelated charge dealing with traffic. So this is a person who already has a warrant for their arrest. They decide to commit criminal trespass with a bunch of elementary students, bold as all can be. And then she gets upset because the local news runs a story, and she posted all of it. Everything they ran, she put it on her social media. And now she's claiming that she is being targeted and that it is unfair what people are saying about her. The audacity of Karens in this world. Cenk, I don't even know where to start, brother.
First of all, I like that your adaptation of Obama's speech, the audacity of Karens.
Right.
And that really, to me, is the point of this story. So look, she goes in, she's 4'11" and 105 pounds, and she's got a mask on, right? Well, okay, it's a little bit easier. Like if I went into my kid's school weighing in, I don't even want to tell you what I'm weighing in at. If mask or not, they're gonna catch me that I'm not a 13-year-old. And she thinks she's being clever, right? And why does she do this? To get famous. Of course. I mean, she's trying to prove a real security point about the school. No, she's not. And then, but the main point of the story is the entitlement. And that's why she's a Karen, right? And no matter what her race or ethnicity is, that's a Karen right there that breaks the law and then turns around and goes, how dare you enforce the law against me? The law is for other people. It's not for me. No, the law is for everybody. And if you go in there like a weirdo into a 7th grade class, recording yourself the whole time with the purpose of just catching some fame off of it, right? Catching some shine off of it, if you will. Well, then yeah, the law is going to get enforced, and you're not above the law. I know that certain, there's a Republican ideology in the country that the law is not for certain classes of people, but it should be, and in this case, it was.
Yeah, and here's the thing, man. It would be people like her that would scream Bloody Mary if a black woman or black man went on an elementary campus and decided to pose as somebody other than themselves. They would say this person is a criminal, this person is a thug, this person put our children at risk. But she does a video saying how she's a victim of some type of targeted attack, even though she's the one who committed the criminal offense. And it is amazing to me that she wants the benefit of a contrary narrative to being a criminal, even though she would commit to a criminal narrative if the person would have been black or brown on the campus of her students' school. And the other thing is that the whole genesis for why she did this, Cenk, was about mask. These damn folks have went mask crazy. She was trying to make a point about wearing mask and that somehow wearing a mask makes children unsafe because a person like her can get on a campus. Well, the reality is she got caught. She proved the security measures actually worked. She did not do another blog and say, hey y'all, I'm happy to report that at the school, they actually caught me, they arrested me, and the protocols operate quite well. I have an entire mugshot to prove it.
Yeah, it's the last things I'll say on this is, first of all, as a man whose family is Muslim, and I'm atheist now, but my background is Muslim. If I infiltrated a school to try to prove a point, I might wind up in Guantanamo Bay. Okay.
Well, you will be shot, Cenk. I'm sorry to say this, brother. They will put bullets in you probably.
Yeah, and there's just no end to the entitlement though. On social media today, somebody said in a response to a tweet that I had that Amy Cooper, the one who reported the bird watcher in Central Park, the African American man, that she was right, that the bird watcher was stalking her while she was trying to walk her dog and he's trying to watch birds. That if you're a black man, watching a bird makes you guilty. But if you're white and you call in a false death threat, etc., that she did, saying my life is in danger and endangering his life, you're still not guilty because entitlement.
Yep.
And that's what this story's about.
Very well said, my friend. That concludes the first part of the show. And on the other side, we have the bullpen. Those are Republicans who are willing to step in the ring with me and debate top issues of the day. Who's the Republican? Does it matter? Does it really freaking matter? Stick and stay. Cenk, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashad. This show is fantastic. It almost feels like it's indisputable. It's great to have you on the network. Can't wait for the debate. Can't wait for every show, every day. Check it out, guys.
Thank you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Yep.
Indisputable.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning. She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight. And that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
back to Indisputable. We have coming up now the bullpen. That is your great debate that's about to take place. You don't want to miss it. Before I go to the debate, let me read some of the viewer comments. We have Electric Miscellanea. The NFL and the GOP are apparently in a competition to see which organization can be the most racist. Yeah, it's like a race to the bottom rather than a race to the top, right? Zoolander Establishment DM says, so Joe Manchin is officially not for the people. Doesn't get any clearer than that. Derek says, let's go, Doc. I think I read that one earlier. Okay, thank you to Carrie Venus, super chat, saying thanks. Also, Silver Harlow, thank you. Moon Dragon, congratulations on your new show. I'm not Christian, but we'll continue to request that you preach, brother. But we're all part of the human family, my friend. All of us. God gave us all a brain before he gave us a book. Also, Sinful Solutions, thank you for the super chat. Cleaning Crew, thank you for the super chat. Jay Myers, thank you for the super chat. Alex Ceresi, maybe I'm saying that almost halfway, kind of 1/3 right. Love the new show. And I love you for loving the new show. Appreciate you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have with me Jennifer Nassour, Republican strategist, former chairwoman of the Massachusetts, am I right? Massachusetts Republican Party. And you have a distinguished career. You're an attorney at law, and you have said some things on the record. Some I agree, some I disagree with. But you became anti-Trump at some point, or at least you've said things that were not in an apologist way toward Trump. So let's talk about some issues today. Welcome to Indisputable.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Absolutely. Let's talk about mask.
Yes.
There's this sentiment that somehow wearing a mask has become political. What are your thoughts about mask mandates? And do you think wearing a mask has become politicized in the conversation in America?
I definitely think it has. So I live in the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we, despite being an incredibly blue state, we have a Republican governor. He's the most popular governor in the country. He is in his 6th year, 2nd term. He had mask mandates up until Memorial Day weekend. However, it was supposed to be in July that he was, or August, that he was going to lift all the mandates. But due to the CDC's recommendations, he jumped it and moved it up to May 29th. In Massachusetts today, anywhere you go, now we also have about 70% of our population is vaccinated. And so, we're doing really well on these vaccinations. Anywhere you go, you will still see people wearing masks. Even outside, you still see people wearing masks. And what I was told when I went into a store, actually I went into 2 different stores in Boston on either side of the street, pretty much the exact same store, sell the exact same things. One store, please put your mask on. The other store, you can just walk in and out of. I was in another place where they said, these mask mandates, it changed too fast for us. So we're not going along with this. However, interestingly, in Rhode Island, which is an hour away from here, you can go anywhere in Rhode Island and no one's wearing a mask. That state is also a super blue state, and it has a Democratic governor. And once that Democratic governor lifted that mask mandate, you know what happened. Everyone took the masks off. So I do think that it has become political.
Well, let's talk about this in the context of health. And I want to make some comparisons here because I think you guys on the right have missed the mark on your argument and debate about mask or mask mandate. Do you agree that masks actually do limit the transference of COVID-19?
100%.
So you agree with that? So
yes.
You're on the right side of the science. Let me pose this question to you. Do you think it is an intrusion of the government to say we have a mask mandate in our state?
I think it's good public health. And I think anything that is public health and public safety is something that we should abide by. I'm a rule follower more than I am a political person.
All right, so you just lawyered me right there. All right, in all due respect, you're trying to lawyer me. Now, do you think it is intrusion, madam, for the government to mandate the wearing of masks? Is it in fact government intrusion or not?
Well, I think that some can say that it is an intrusion in telling adults what to do. However, we ask people to show ID to get alcohol. We ask for ID when we board planes. So the government is there for certain things. And I do think that the government is there to make sure that people are safe. And the mask mandates were to make sure that people are safe.
So let me do this one more time, Counselor. Counselor, do you believe it is government intrusion to mandate individuals to wear masks?
No, I don't think it is government intrusion if it is for a legitimate public safety. However, once the CDC came out and said, and here is where Republicans and Democrats, here's where it becomes political. Last year, when Trump was president, everyone kept saying to the administration and to Republicans, follow the science. This year, Biden's president, and the science is wrong, right? So now if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask, but the CDC can't be right. So now the science actually doesn't apply. So my feeling is it's not a who's in office, it's the CDC. Yes, follow the science. And if they said we don't need to wear masks, then once you're vaccinated, then I think we go for it.
Let's talk about the origin of the politicized nature of wearing a mask. Would you not agree that this whole thing was at first a health issue, but it was in fact politicized by Donald Trump and his surrogates, and that started the politicization of wearing a mask? Or do you think it started somewhere else?
No, I think it probably started with the administration. I mean, I think that, the president, when this was all starting, we did hear conflicting information, right? I mean, I went on a plane on March 15th of 2020 with my 3 kids, no masks, because we were told it doesn't help to wear a mask. We were told store-bought masks don't work. So, and then all of a sudden the information was flipping. So I do think that it was the administration, but it was also the miscommunication and the misinformation that they were being given.
By who? Wait a minute. They were told clearly that mask helps. They were told clearly that COVID was a real thing. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump gave a secret interview where he said this thing kills children too. And then a few days later, he comes out and says it's gonna be here today, gone tomorrow. He represented an adversarial nature of what he was even told or what he told the journalist in that interview. So you can't tell me that Donald Trump was unaware of COVID-19 during that time. He wasn't confused about it.
No. I don't think he was confused about it. I think what I'm saying is Fauci first came out and said to all of us, and we can go back and look at what was said in early 2020, in March of 2020, do not wear a mask. Normal people on the street don't wear a mask. It's worse for you to wear a mask. That was actually out of Fauci's mouth. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but he did say essentially that. He also said, don't buy any of those store-bought masks. Those don't help, and we need to save all of the masks for the healthcare workers. Then within a couple of weeks, it changed. That's when every child in America was making masks. Every grandmother in America was making masks. I was buying wife beater t-shirts from Target and making my own masks out of them, right? But because we were told not to buy these masks. So that's all I'm saying is that I think for someone like Donald Trump, who has always been the boss, he's always been the one giving the instructions, to be told one thing and then flipped around the next day, I think it also caused him a little bit of trauma, and right. He was a little bit upset by that.
So Jennifer, I'm gonna call bull on that. And so let me tell you where I'm gonna call bull on that at. Fauci did say that a lot of the store-bought masks do not do what it should do to protect you from COVID-19. However, he also said in that same statement what kind of mask to get in order to protect yourself from COVID-19. So I don't feel that you're being completely genuine when you leave out the part of him saying, but here's the mask that you do need to get. And let's talk about the beginning of the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, you had significant misinformation and individuals who simply did not know yet. But you're right, 2 to 3 weeks into the pandemic, there was what we call settled science about the fact that COVID-19 was an extreme pandemic and you needed to take these particular measures that included masks, it included hand washing, it included social distancing in order to stop or slow down the transmission of COVID-19. That was clear. Fauci said it on the record, said it multiple times. All in healthcare and the CDC said a synonymous message after 2 or 3 weeks in. And then it was only the politics of Donald Trump who said something adversarial to the truth of every established organization in the scientific community. You cannot explain that away by saying Trump was confused. And if he's that damn confused, he had no business being president of the United States when every single scientific entity agreed that COVID-19 was a problem and that mask could help decrease the spread.
Right, which is why Donald Trump wasn't reelected. I mean, I think that you're actually proving exactly what happened in history, right? So, I mean, we see that leadership takes real leaders. Now, you have someone like Andrew Cuomo who took a bunch of elderly people and who had COVID and stuck them back in nursing homes, and then we had greater nursing home deaths in New York than in any other state around the country. You have other governors that didn't take it seriously or took it too seriously and shut down their economy, and the economy is having a tough time being rebooted. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing, and look, you saw lots of people on the Trump campaign that were in a war room that ended up getting COVID. So I mean, this thing was real. It was definitely real, but there is a time and a place. And once we knew the science and everyone was wearing masks and businesses were doing what they were doing, and then the CDC came around and said, our numbers are lower. Look, at the end of the day, we all get flu shots. I don't know about you. Every year I get the flu shot, I still get the flu, but I'm not dying from it. And so that's what we're trying to prevent is people dying. We're never going to get to zero. We're never going to get to 0 cases. But what we want to do is not see people die, whether they're old or young. We don't want people to die. And I think that was really a missed opportunity by the president at the time and his leadership not to say wear masks, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and just social distance until we get this under control.
Do you believe Cuomo's policy and his negligence, which I agree, I think Cuomo was negligent. You will get absolutely no love from me as it relates to that action. Do you think his negligence led to the death of individuals in these elderly centers or nursing homes?
I do. I think he was very wrapped up in the celebrity of it all. I mean, no matter where you were in the US, you would see the president and then you would see Cuomo. And then maybe you would catch your governor after Cuomo's address. But every day Cuomo was on like clockwork.
So and let me pose this to you.
He got caught up in that.
Let me pose this. Do you think Trump's policies killed hundreds of thousands?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit different. Trump didn't
hell to the no, ma'am.
Trump didn't stick people in nursing homes together.
No, Jennifer, if Cuomo utilized your critical thinking here, utilize your Iraq formulation, if Cuomo's policies led to the death of individuals in his state, how is it that Trump's policies that you agreed ignored the same basic elements of what this virus would do? How is it that his policies did not lead to the death of hundreds of thousands of Americans?
Well, because I'll tell you why. Because there's a distinction here that you have to understand. In Cuomo's situation, as the governor of a state, he took people out of hospitals and said, please send them back to the nursing homes. In Trump's situation, it was people who were ignorant in certain circumstances that wanted to listen to Trump and not listen to the science, that were adults, that were not vulnerable. Cuomo took the most vulnerable and stuck them in a very precarious situation.
You don't think Trump supporters are the most vulnerable group in the country. Come on now.
Listen, I think if you are going to believe the thing you want to believe and you get sick and you die because you were listening to him, it is very different than having someone say to you, go back to that nursing home. And then all of a sudden the entire population dies because of that.
It's different, but it's not. One is death by policy and the other one not. They are both death by policy here. Both of those elements are death by policy. Maybe we won't agree on that, but I do find it strikingly amazing that you can call out Cuomo for his misguided policies and how they correlate to the death of our elders in this country, but you cannot make the connection to how Trump and his policies and his politicizing of this contributed to the death of Americans across the entire country. I don't get that.
Well, again, I will tell you once again, I think it's a difference of ignorance versus vulnerability. And I think when you are responsible, it's like being a parent. If you have a child who's 22 and you say, don't go out and drink tonight and vomit all over yourself, or you say to your 16-year-old, don't do this, you are much more responsible for your 16-year-old. You're much more responsible for the 1-year-old not walking into the pool. But if your 22-year-old just happens to fall into a pool, the 22-year-old is responsible for him or herself. And so that's the difference, is the vulnerability versus the ignorance.
Jennifer, we all know that children are classified differently based on their ability to understand and comprehend.
What's a person in a nursing home? A person in a nursing home is
we get that. I'm not debating on the fact that Cuomo's policy led to the death of people, okay? I'm not debating that. My debate with you is, how do you give Trump a pass when you can admit that his policies were adversarial to what was needed to protect Americans, and that he in fact started to politicize the issue, and it led to individuals not taking care of themselves? They died, Jennifer. They're dead right now.
I totally understand that, and I think it was a failure of leadership, which I agree with you on.
Failure of leadership led to the death of people.
It is a failure of leadership, but
his failure of leadership led to the death of people, right?
If you're going to text and drive, any law in the world is not going to prevent you from getting into an accident and killing yourself or someone else. If you are going to drink and drive, that also is not going to prevent anyone. And same thing with driving while intoxicated.
All right, my apologies, we had a technical glitch. Let me ask you a question about voting in America, okay? There are multiple bills that have been posed to basically counteract the effects of some of these policies around various states. Do you believe, and I gotta just ask you as a sensible person, do you believe that some states are going too far in passing voter restriction laws that adversely affect certain demographics in their state?
Yes, so I do believe that we all have the right and the privilege to vote. And I think that there needs to be, everyone needs to have that ability. I live in a state where we don't check voter ID. However, there are people still on the rolls from neighbors of mine for the past 20 years that don't live there anymore. I don't think Massachusetts is a place where there is voter fraud. If there is, it's very little, and it could be from, who knows what party. I'm not saying it's even going on. I think, we do need to have some restrictions in place that are smart. Or not restrictions, I shouldn't say restrictions. I think that we need to make sure that, people are registered to vote, that you're who you say you are. I think that we need to keep polls open longer. I think that the day of election day is great, but I know for me, myself, I'm a mom, I'm a working mom, I've got 3 kids. who knows if on that first Tuesday in November, if someone's gonna get sick or someone's gonna break a leg and I'm not gonna get to vote. In Massachusetts, up until this year, it was impossible to even get an absentee ballot. So even for a legitimate cause, you would have to be out of the state, not on the other side of the state, literally out of the state.
Jennifer, so why are Republicans doing this? Why are Republicans passing laws to restrict voting, utilizing the fabricated pretext of massive voter fraud? Because you don't believe in the big lie, right? You don't believe massive voter fraud took place.
I don't believe that massive voter fraud took place.
Now, all of these states, these state legislatures, these Republican-led state legislatures are all, 100% of them, are all passing voter restriction laws based on their proclamation that massive voter fraud took place. Now, Jennifer, you're a Republican. You're a Republican strategist. Are you holding your party accountable to the truth, or are you sitting back saying nothing and allowing the big lie to permeate and destroy the political movement known as the Republican Party?
Yeah, I think it's actually really bad for us. I think there are some distinctions. I look at Georgia and I know that everyone, that was the start of it, and that's what everyone was pointing to at first. But I think the intention there truly was to make the voting better and easier and not more restrictive by extending the early voting time, by having weekends. Listen, I have been in politics for 30 years. You can't stand someplace and campaign for I know here in Massachusetts, I was a candidate. You can't stand right in front of the polls with your signs. You have to be a certain amount of space away. Not being able to provide food and water, too bad, bring your own food and water. There's no regulation against that. So, I think it depends on where they're going with this, but I don't want this to go back. And I'll tell you, I'm a woman. We only got our right to vote in the 1920s, right? I mean, it's not like this is something that any person should take for granted, because it could easily be walked back on any of us.
Okay, so let me correct you on a few things here. Senate Bill 202, which is the state Senate bill you're referring to in the state of Georgia, it did not extend weekend voting. Here's what it did. You have a few counties that always show up for Black lawmakers or Black candidates and Democratic candidates. Those counties are DeKalb, Fulton, Clayton. Always show up 100% of the time, okay? Those counties have an extensive weekend voting regimen and early voting regimen. What the state of Georgia did is they created a uniform policy that mandated all 159 counties to engage in weekend voting, but it created a cap for how many they can do. That only adversely affected places that showed up for Democrats, because now they are limited on how many weekends they can offer. Here's another thing they did. They de facto eliminated what's called souls to the polls, or Sunday voting, where they wrote in the law that the county would have to make a decision to offer Sunday voting or Saturday voting, but they could not offer both. Now, what sense does that make, if not simply to stop the program of souls to the polls? And let me correct you on another point. The issue of bringing food and water to a precinct line has now been criminalized through the statute. So it is against the law to bring someone food or water who's waiting in line to vote in the state of Georgia, when it was already against the law to campaign to that individual in the state of Georgia. The reason why they made it against the law to bring someone food or water is because nonprofit organizations and churches would run commercials and say, if you come to this precinct that has a history of long lines, don't worry, we got you. We will give you food and water. Not partisan, they're not promoting a candidate, they're not breaking the election laws. So they made that action against the law to stop those commercials from encouraging people to come out and vote. Do you understand the nuance here? They did not expand people's right to vote or people's access to voting. They limited people's access to voting in highly Democratic, highly black populated counties. Are you with me on that?
I get that, and so my understanding is that there's a longer time frame to vote, so you have more days to vote. But also, I don't agree. I don't think that anyone should be given food or water while they're standing online.
Why?
Your job is to go vote.
Wait a minute.
Go vote and get out of there.
Come on now, madam.
No,
madam, you're a trained attorney. You think it's a good idea?
Yes, and I definitely think it's political. It is a political motive.
So let's go back to the basics.
Give someone food or water and wink at them.
Jennifer, I only have a few minutes, okay? You are in agreement that we need to make it against the law to hand somebody a drink of damn water who's waiting in a line. It don't matter what line you're waiting in.
If you're working with a campaign or a nonprofit.
No, that's not what the law says, Jennifer. The law does not distinguish if you work with a campaign or not. The law simply says the action itself is illegal. And the action itself should never be deemed illegal. Just handing someone a bottle of water, not campaigning, is against the law in the state of Georgia. Do you agree with that?
If I went to give you a bottle of water as my friend, and I just gave you a bottle of water, that is different than me going through the line and handing out everyone a bottle of water.
Under the statute in Georgia, even doing that, Jennifer, and I want you to read the statute, it doesn't have to be organized. Even if you walk in line and hand your friend, hand your mama, hand your grandmother a bottle of water, it is against the statute as written.
Okay, that's not the interpretation out there, but I will go back and reread that statute and make sure. But the way that I interpreted it was that if it is organized by a nonprofit, which I run a nonprofit, and so
nonprofits, 501c3s are non-political, madam. 501c3s are non-political. They're
not political, but there is always a training sense. There's always candidates. There's always someone that you're supporting. And if I walked over, me personally, in the city of Boston, to a bunch of people I knew in line, I could understand how that would be deemed inappropriate and political because of the stuff that I do. And so I think that there is a distinction to be made. And I think that it is, if you're going to give your mom a bottle of water, that's a very different part and a different role than if the person who runs Planned Parenthood or works at Planned Parenthood, but it doesn't say Planned Parenthood, but is known in the community, is sitting in the
that's not what the law says. Jennifer, you're getting into what aboutism. Everything you're saying is not what the law says. The law simply makes the behavior, the activity of handing someone a snack or handing someone water in line without engaging in campaigning, without engaging in electioneering. It makes that illegal. Say that again.
You know how we solve this? We now get into term limits where we limit the amount of time that people can be in elected office.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And then we will eliminate all the BS that goes on.
Yeah.
Because if we start taking people out, then no one will be able to be in office long enough to actually care about this.
Jennifer,
and I think that is a nonpartisan issue.
Yeah, and I gotta say this, I have to wrap. Another way to get rid of BS is to get rid of those damn Trumpites in your party. I appreciate you so much, all right? Thank you for being on Indisputable.